Hi everyone, my name is Warmar and in this video I'm going to show you my latest plugin, which is just a simple but straightforward Laravel AI based translation system. Now this translation system essentially builds on top of the existing localization functions and system built in Laravel, and it's supported from Laravel version 11 and LiveWire version 3 above. Basically, this plugin allows you to extract all the keys and strings from your application, even if you have thousands of different URLs, dynamic variables, dynamic even URLs, meaning it changes depending like a product page or something like that. It allows you to scan through endless links, extract all the particular keys like strings, and then export them into the target JSON files located in the lang folder. It also allows you to essentially translate these strings using the cheapest 4.0 mini model from OpenAI. I just added this by default. I think it's a really cheap and straightforward and good translation. So it also comes with a very good optimized language middleware, which allows you to essentially automatically language prefix your routing, like /about, /ar about, /de, or fr for French, or whatever your language might be. So it's not just a translation system, but it's actually a relatively full framework around translation itself. But again, it's built on top of the existing localization. So essentially the actual kind of translation itself is powered by Laravel itself. Now, first thing first. Now, when it comes to a brand new project, the first thing you would need to do is, of course, publish your language files. Now, this is recommended by Laravel in the localization documentation. So essentially, we'll just grab this command and simply run it in a brand new clean project. So I'm just going to do like this. And then as you can see, now the lang folder is created and these are the default PHP files. Alright, so we can visit now the documentation page, which tells us exactly what to do. After the publish Laravel's default localization folders, we can go ahead and install the package via Composer. In order to do that, run the Composer require Warmar /Laravel AI Translate command. Let's just copy and then run the translate command. Now what it does is uses Composer and then basically installs the translation as a package, and then it's going to drop it with the quick installation command included, meaning that we can now just go ahead and do the install the package assets, which is PHP Artisan AI Translate install. What it does is essentially just copies all the files that needed for this application to run. If we extend this, we can see what are those files. The files are the config, the migration, the views, and the app folder files. We're gonna go through each of these. It asks us if we want to run the migrations now. Yes, I would like to run the migrations. You are set for detailed configuration, advanced routing, visit these documentations. That's exactly what we're going to do now. Let's visit the documentation and continue what we should do. Okay, so first thing first, it tells us that we need to register the middleware. Because a new middleware has been added to the system, we need to add it into the bootstrap /app.php. This was previously kernel.php before Laravel 11, if I'm right, but now it's app.php. And it tells us exactly how we should do that. So I'm going to go to my bootstrap app.php, and this is exactly where we need to add it with the with middleware section. Now first I'm going to declare this on the top. So essentially just right here, and then I'm going to add into the with middleware section. So just here, I'm going to do that right now. So there we go. I added the new middleware right here. I'm going to save it. Let's continue. Next, it tells me to add the configurations for the environment. So I need to copy all of these and essentially add it into my .environment. So let's open the environment. And then let's go down at the bottom and let's add it. By the way, it's possible you already have a queue connection. So if you do so, you can just not insert that. This is just double checking to make sure that your queue is set up correctly. So these are all the things that you need to insert, and of course replace the API key right here with your OpenAI API key. Okay, we added the environment and we updated our bootstrap. Let's continue what to do next. Now it tells us you need to edit the app service provider. The app service provider's boot function is essentially needed to be extended with these two basic functions right here. Now in order to do that, of course, we need to also declare on top the blade, and of course also I'm going to include the view that we're working with. So let's first declare them. Let's go to app providers, app service providers, then let's declare that we are going to work with blade and we are going to work with view. Now after that, inside the boot, I can already see there is something from Laravel, or you possibly also have something of your own, but this is what comes with Laravel's latest installation. What I'm going to do is I'm going to keep it and just going to add my stuff. There is two main functions or something that we're going to add here essentially. And the first one is a view share and the other one is a blade directive. The blade directive is the heart of operations, which basically allows you, if you are in collection mode from the environment right here, collection mode, if this is true, then this blade directive gonna place simple HTML comments in your pages which are invisible to Google, doesn't affect your SEO, but it allows us to extract the strings from it. And then the view share, which just exposes a couple of variables which are really handy from the front end, such as is it RTL, the language code, the language URL, easy route, and so on and so forth. Okay, so I added both of these things, and I also declared on top these stuff. This is the three main things that need to happen: the bootstrap file, the environmental setup, and the app service provider. Of course, I can't push these setups into the composer itself. You need to add them yourself. Once all these strings set up, the next step will be to take care of our routes. So if we go here, now it tells us that we need to config some queue workers. If we are in Composer and Dev, it already fires up a worker for us. But if we are in production, then we need to manually add, or even better, use supervisor or some kind of queue management. The whole system is based on jobs and queues. And it also tells us to create required database tables, but we already have it, so we can just skip this step. Now it already tells us to install the files, but we use the Laravel command, so we can just skip this step also. And it tells us the file structure. Great. Let's have a look of how the file structure is. So essentially what's added is a middleware, two jobs, a live wire backend, and of course with the appropriate frontend, and of course a app service provider which hasn't added, which is added two functions in it, and the services, which are exactly three services, one config file, this generates dynamically, and then the routes which are of course there, we just need to edit. Let's go through the files, shall we? So let's go back to our application. We can close all these tabs and bring up all the files. So in the app folder, we have the HTTP middleware, and this is the language middleware, which essentially the heart of operations. This is the actual interceptor, which intercepts routes, and then they redirect, they set based on the session language and so on. So if you are at, I don't know, /de at a German page, let's say /de/about us or contact, and you would manually type in, let's say FR for French, then it would essentially set the session language to French and redirect you correctly. Or if you remove it, or let's say you manually input EN, it's going to redirect you to a non-EN base, because of course, canonically and SEO-wise, redirect from EN to plain /. No prefix on that one. So the middleware is really kind of the whole heart of the operations. So other than middleware, of course, we have two jobs. One is this one, which is essentially the extractor job itself. And then the translation job is the other one. Now, these are going to not directly hard-coded here what to do, but they're actually going to use services. So both of them are essentially at the end going to use services in order to do their operations. What are services? You can find the services right here, services, translation folder, and you have three services. AI translator, directly used by the translate job, string extractor service directly used by the scan URL for strings job, and the URL collector, which is does not used by any jobs because it's a straight execution. Let's open, and this is one of these service. This is essentially to save the URLs. This one is to extract the strings, and this one is to translate the strings. So essentially URL does not relate to any job, but the AI translator relates to this job and the string extractor to this job itself. Okay, so right now we have 6 files so far added. We can close the app folder, no more here. And we can go to config. There is the translation.php right here, which contains all the necessary stuff, such as the translation mode, which just, exposes environment.env variables. So the source language, the target language, the language display names, and so on and so forth, like RTL language files where they can be found, URL collection string setup, so the batch size and the timeout, string extraction settings, such as should we use internal Laravel routes or outside if another website contains it, clearing the cache if the cache should be cleared before scanning, and of course the AI translation settings such as the batch size, concurrent jobs, rate limit per minute, and so on and so forth, which is just, and of course the prompt itself and the retries, which allows you to customize the behavior of the translation itself. And then once this is done, the next thing is going to be right here in the lang folder, nothing here, but it will create the JSON files here. Now in the resource folder, views, LiveWire, translation, it added this translate menu. This is the front end for the translation dashboard itself. And then the backend would be in up, LiveWire, translation, translate menu. If you don't want this, you could create an inertia, React, some kind of Vue.js or whatever you want. I use LiveWire because I like and I use LiveWire, so I just created the translate menu itself using that. Okay, so other than LiveWire, I also pushed 2 more simple Vue files, so views, and not inside LiveWire, but actually just the native views. One is the home.blade.php with just a couple of examples of how you should use the translation, and of course an include. Now you should include this lang, which is right here, lang.blade.php, either in your native Blade files, if they are native Blade, or if you are using LiveWire, you should include this into your layout file, top of the layout into the head section. Why? Because this lang is essentially just a very friendly, canonical, and SEO-friendly Blade file, which if you push it to the head, it's gonna tell you all the available languages into the bots that are crawling you, and then how they can reach the target languages. It's just really nice to have. It's canonical helper, basically. Okay, now that we went over everything, you see all the files that we have here. Most of the things you're not going to need to touch whatsoever, so let's just keep closing all of them, such as the jobs, the services, and so on. And then let's open what we actually need to mess around a little bit, which are going to be the routes. So let's go to the routes, web.php, and these are the routes, basically. Let's open our helper right here in the README. So essentially now we are reached the routing system, the route langRoute helper. Now this you can copy as it is, and you can insert this right here at the top of the routes. What is this? It looks a little bit scary what this is. Now what is it basically is it allows you that instead of writing it like this, /ar/de/es, so for each languages, you're just going to create a new very syntax friendly langRoute, which is just says it's a get /about, and then what it's going to do is going to create /ar about, es about, or as many languages you have. You have 25 languages. You don't need to write all the routes 25 times because you're just going to use this as a helper. And of course, I also wrote a couple of examples, such as simple ones, routes with parameters, right? Like category, slug, so on. With middleware, you just do it like this, like usual at the end. Middleware, grouping outside, you are just adding inner, saying it's a middleware right here. And if you have multiple ones, just do it like that, don't group them. Routes with where constraints, and then like this. And then posts also work here. So just a couple of examples of how you should do so. And then these are really handy because essentially the lang URL that we just exposed from the app service provider, they can be used essentially, let's say inside your header menu or somewhere where you want to especially do URL friendly. So you do a href like this, and you do lang URL about. What is going to generate is going to generate /ar about, /en about, /de about for all your languages, depending on what language you are. So lang URL essentially means that if I'm German currently on the homepage and I'm doing this and I'm clicking on it, it's gonna do a /de/about and navigate it there. So it really saves you a lot of time. Alright, so now that is done, let's actually add our translation dashboard, which is the Livewire component that I included with the package. Let's refresh translation, and there we go. This is going to be the main dashboard. Now there is three parts. First is the generate URLs, second part is the collect translation strings, and the third one is to translate all the keys. So essentially, as you can see, this is the first page that I would like to translate. So what is the first thing that I need to do? I need to add it right here and then add it into the generate URLs. If I want more, I could do /about, /contact, and so on and so forth. You get the idea. But right now, I'm just going to keep this as the main one. I'm going to add it, and now it says there is total URLs 1. What's changed? What's changed is that inside the config, there is a urls.json, which essentially contains the first URL. This will hold all the URLs that the extractor should loop through one by one until and create jobs for it, and then the jobs will be executed by that. So essentially, whatever you add new URL is going to be added into here. Now, I also in the environment, I need to make sure down here that first of all my API key is not empty, and then I'm in collection mode. If it's false, let's add it to true, and once I switch it to collection mode, it's gonna refire. And of course I could also clear my cache or view. That would be a nice idea. So PHP artisan clear, and then clear the view. No. Why? Because I need to go test project, yes. And then let's try that again, shall we? No, PHP artisan view clear, I guess. I don't know the commands. So let's clear the view. Let's clear the config. Yes, okay. So now it should be fine. And now the collection mode is true. And how we can test it? If we open this without refresh, in the body, you're going to see that these are H2 tags below each other. There's nothing too crazy about this. But if I refresh now, when I cleared it, these now have essential comments, actual HTML comments. These are not related to SEO. Google not gonna hate it for that, but these are helpful for us so I can extract the strings from the pages, because the T start and T end is good. This is what's going to be extracted, which is the middle part. So this is how the translation works, is that when you are in collection mode from the config, essentially it's going to watch for comments in your HTMLs and it's going to extract them in live. All right, so let's try the extraction process. So let's go back here, and because we have one URL added, we should be able to just click here into collect translation strings. And that's going to extract it, and then you can see that the keys in the English JSON is now 3 keys. So what it means is that it created this English.json. Let's go back into our language folder, lang, and now you can see that we have an English JSON. So what happened is that the actual syntax that I created right here in the home here is extracted all these strings and put them into the English.json. So right now in the system we have a total of up here 3 keys in the English JSON, and then in the translate, if I set up my OpenAI key, of course, then I can translate. All right, let's just do that. Let's have the translate running. So once I start it, it's going to essentially, well, it's just 3 strings, so it's going to be super quick, but essentially it created a ar.json, and inside you have the Arabic translations accordingly. Of course, when you have like, let's say 5,000 different strings, it's gonna take a longer process, but even that goes through a couple of minutes, depending how much workers you have, what's your rate limit in OpenAI, and how you do it. So essentially, once that's done, if everything is correct, then I should be able to just simply visit the Arabic URL. And because we have our middleware, what I could do is right here in the home page, let's go back like this. So in the home page, I could do a /ar, and essentially right now I have the full Arabic translations. Because, like I said earlier, if we go back to the resources, views, home, these ones do not just act like a extractor helper which places comments, of course considering that in the .env you have the collection mode turned on, but they also acting like the default Laravel translation trigger. So essentially now everything works. So I have the normal and I have the Arabic. If I switch to this, now it's a normal. If I switch to AR, now it's Arabic, of course, like this. So this goes to all of the routes, and essentially now you have a complete middleware that can do redirects and everything. So if I would do /en for English, it would redirect me back into the original language because en doesn't need a prefix. Of course, the documentation also contains a couple other things. It explains to you real-world usage of how to use the lang URL helpers, and then how to other stuff. So for example, there is a couple of helpers here: RTR detection, generate language specific URLs, meaning to you lang URL based about us, and so on and so forth. And of course, real world examples of header navigations of how you should build them. Language switcher examples, how you should do the language switcher itself. Using Livewire components, of course. But just to have a look of how would you actually use this, let's say lang URL in a navigation, of course, we can create it right here in the home page. So let's say we're just dropping a simple href, which has the lang URL, so variable, and it uses the home route, essentially going to the home, which is in itself, because it's already right here in the home, but with language aware. So that means that when we go and test this, let's refresh. When we click here, it's gonna go back to where we are home. But when we do a /ar and then we click, it's gonna go back to /ar because it's language aware. So clicking right here into the home, you can see on the bottom left corner that it goes to AR. But if we are at the non-AR or English version, which is again non-prefixed, it goes back to the home one. So essentially this is just instead of you needing to say that if language is Arabic, then the URL is this. This is all kind of tied together because essentially language URL is just a friendly way of saying whatever the language is, use the specific one, which already is a helper here in the roots. And where it comes from, the variable language URL, it comes from the providers, the app service provider right here in the view section. So lang URL essentially is right here, this one. So it just returns to you the root, but with a correct prefix. So that's about it. These are the ones that we added, and that's exactly why it's like this. It's a really smart way of dealing with like dynamic routes. This of course works with Livewire and everything. But of course this is also more than that because it provides you a full middleware, so I can switch languages by URL. It provides you with variables globally such as lang URL, is RTL, is root, lang codes, which you can use throughout your applications. So I created this for myself, but I'm making a video and I'm open sourcing it if everyone else needs it. If not, then I'm just going to continue use it for my Laravel and Livewire projects. I hope this was informative. I hope that you're going to use it. Take care and I'll see you at the next one.